and welcome, craftsmen, to the Third Degree Masonic podcast. Joining us today is Worshipful Brother Rodney Miller. Pleasure to have you on the podcast, brother.
Well, it's great to be here with you guys. I really appreciate the invite.
Well, again, we just want to say thank you for joining us on the podcast tonight, and we're going to get right into some questions about you so that the craftsmen can kind of understand you a little bit, get to know you as we've gotten to know you tonight. So, we'll just start with the basics. How long have you been a Mason?
I just actually celebrated my 9-year anniversary, so I'm a youngster when it comes to Masonry, and especially for a guy at my age, I guess. But so yeah, I just had my 9-year anniversary on March 25th.
Okay. And then you're a district education officer.
Yeah.
Correct?
So I'm in my second year as a district education officer for the 11th Masonic District here in Ohio. And I love being a district education officer. I've been an educator for 38 years, so it's kind of in my blood. And but I absolutely love it. A lot of fun.
Well, okay, so that kind of starts answering our next question that we have for you, and that is, what do you do for a living, and do you feel that being a Mason makes you better at what you do?
Well, the simple answer is yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. So I'm actually by trade, a band director, music educator, and I taught in the public schools for 34 years as a director of bands, but have been able to do a lot of really cool stuff in there. I've been really blessed to have the career that I've had. When I retired from the public schools, I failed retirement really, really bad. and so I became the director of bands at Heidelberg University and spent some time there and retired from there. I thought, you know what, I think I want to do some things I get to do that I don't have to do. And so I did that. And it was kind of interesting. My last day at Heidelberg was May the 16th. And we had a breakfast. I'm a member of Oliver H. Perry Lodge in Port Clinton. And we had a breakfast. We were just cleaning up, and I got a phone call from Right Worshipful Brother Mark Allred. He says, "Didn't you just retire again 2 days ago?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Great. How would you like to be a district education officer?" So I did that. But then I got a phone call to go out to Kelly's Island in the middle of Lake Erie and teach music out there 1 day a week. So I went from teaching college to teaching a kindergartner, 2 third graders, and a 6th grader. It's the smallest school district in the entire state of Ohio. It's one of the smallest in the entire country. So I go out on the ferry 1 day a week and teach music. I
didn't even know Kelly's Island had a school district.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's really cool then is when the lake freezes, they put me in this small little puddle jumper airplane that's often piloted by a member of the lodge at Oliver H. Perry, and fly out and just do our thing. We take a little side by side from the airstrip to the school. And of course, it's not heated or anything, and it can be quite chilly, to say the least, but I enjoy it. I was over there today. It's just a completely different situation. So, so by trade, yeah, that's what I do. I'm also the associate director of the band directors marching band, which we have marched in Macy's parades. We just marched in the Rose Parade this past year. Also the associate director of the New England Honor Band, which is made up of high school and college students in the 6 New England states. And we marched in the Rose Parade 2 years ago. So I do stuff like that, and I'm a bit of a Renaissance man, I guess, in some ways. You know, I'm a composer and an arranger. I just had a world premiere of mine last week for a school that commissioned me to write a piece on the sesquicentennial of their high school.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that's writing's a lot of fun, and composing and stuff. It's just a blast to do. But I do get to do things like that, and I'm also considered to be one of the top, and I don't know who comes up with titles like this, but one of the top experts and the top portrayer of a brother the March King, John Philip Sousa. And so I actually travel all over the United States, and I've made international trips portraying John Philip Sousa and doing Sousa lectures all over the United States and Sousa concerts and stuff like that. So
that has to be a very interesting and fun experience to do.
It's
in both service of education and the craft.
Right. And what was really cool about it is one day I get a phone call from a gentleman in Washington, D.C., and he was calling from the Hiram Tacoma Lodge. And the Hiram Lodge is where Sousa was initiated, passed, and raised in Washington, D.C. And then they combined with Tacoma. From what I understand, I think that, and I may have this flipped around, one of them had members and no money, and the other one had money and no members. So so Hiram Tacoma. Anyway, so he says, hey, we're going to start a new lodge here in Washington, D.C. We would like for you to be a charter member.
Okay.
So I am the charter member of John Philip Sousa Lodge number 1106, and 1106 was his birthday, November the 6th. So I'm a charter member of that lodge, and we are in what they call in the Grand Lodge of Washington, D.C., an affinity lodge. So like we have lodges like that here in Ohio that it's based on a theme. So, whether it's for Civil War or the Revolutionary War, and, there's different lodges like that here in Ohio. But in Washington, D.C., they call them affinity lodges, and they only meet on the 5th Thursday of a month, which only happens 5 times a year. So I try to make it into Washington, D.C. for those meetings, and it's a lot of fun.
That's actually a really interesting, meeting time, just to think, it only happens certain times, and it's not once a month or so, like what we kind of have going on for us.
What's interesting, they don't confer degrees. You have to be a Master Mason in order to join. So it's almost like an appendant body. Sometimes I hear them referred to as arts and science lodges. And
yes, that's the term I've generally heard.
Yeah. And in Washington, D.C., they call them affinity lodges. And it's kind of interesting when you look at the code for the Grand Lodge of Washington, D.C., it really doesn't say how often they have to meet. And if you talk to a Grand Lodge officer, they'll say, yeah, we kind of thought that 4 or 5 times a year was good. So it doesn't really say it in code how many times they have to meet. But so I get to do a lot of really cool stuff. I've been really blessed, and I just lots of traveling and doing different things.
Each one of those things could be an episode all on its own, I think.
Yeah. It's I'm 60 years old. I would have never thought when I started my career 38 years ago that I'd be able to do all the cool stuff that I get to do. And, I've conducted some very famous groups. I've conducted the United States Marine Band, the President's Own, and I've done research for them and different colleges and major symphony orchestras. And it's just a lot of fun. It's just, but, going back now I'll go back and the answer was yes. Has Masonry made me better? Absolutely. It's taught me a lot of different things and the interaction of people, and also the things maybe that we just, we live in a society where we're talking about a lot of stuff that gives a lot of division. And, as we know that unwritten rule, we're not talking about religion and politics in a lodge, because how do arguments start? Well, you know what? I don't discuss it outside of the lodge that much either. I really don't. Because it's just, we're so divided. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And I'm a big one on agape love, loving everybody. I mean, I can say this. I look at people, I love you guys. It's just the way I am. I love everybody I come into contact with. Does that mean I have to agree with what they're doing or what they're saying? No, but I'm going to love them. I'm going to pray for them. And I think that Masonry has really helped put some perspective on where I fit into our society and how I can best serve my students. And it's not only the students, it's their parents, it's the community, it's the band as a whole, So I've tried to apply that into Masonry, and especially as being a district education officer, I think it's really valuable.
So that leads into another question I wanted to ask you specifically. As a DEO, Can you explain to some of our maybe newer craftsmen who are listeners, or people who just aren't very active members of their districts, what a DEO is, how you become a DEO, and what some of the roles and responsibilities of being a DEO are?
Okay. Well, like I said, Right Worshipful Brother Allred called me and asked me if I would like to do it. And I think that I guess that part of the question is for someone else to answer, because the qualifications are not for me to decide if I'm worthy of that position. That's for somebody else to do. And it's like somebody asked me one time, hey, do you want to be a district deputy? I says, if that's what somebody else wants me to do, and that really is the way I feel about it. It's if somebody else thinks that I can offer something to serve the brethren. So I think that goes into the next thing. District education officers, we are here to serve the brethren, I think not only of our districts, but I think of the state of Ohio. I think that we also are here to enable brothers of the lodges that we are in and doing things with. We are enabling them with the tools to also educate themselves. Some of the best moments I've had in my 38 years of education is where I'm no longer the teacher and I become the student.
Okay.
And there's a lot of guys out there that I have learned an inordinate amount from that have, it's kind of interesting. They'll say, "Oh, I'm just a lowly brother." No. We're all on the level. Let's just face it.
Yep.
And as far as titles, okay, worshipful brother, right worshipful, it doesn't matter to me, because we're all in the same boat, and we're either drilling holes in the back of the boat, or we're helping to steer the rudder to go in the right place. And unfortunately, we have to bail water every now and then from those that are drilling holes in the back. And unfortunately, we have those people, but as a district education officer, it's my responsibility to educate the brethren, and I think to open up their minds to say, well, what if? I told you before we started that I'm a big why guy.
Yeah.
And so every time that I go in and I do some sort of educational seminar, if I can help brothers to put one thing in their mind that on the way out the door, or on their way driving home, or later that night, and they stop and think about one thing that makes them think about it, because when you're thinking, I mean, the definition of education is a change of behavior. And I'm not talking about behavior like we think about, oh, you're misbehaving, go to the principal's office. We're not talking about that. It's a change of behavior. It's a change in the way that we view things and the way that we think. So if I can help a brother take one thing, just one, out of my entire presentation that I've done that night, and say, what if? Or how can I?
Yeah.
Or let me think about this for a little, and maybe let's dig into this a little bit more. I really think that's the ultimate goal for us as district education officers. And I think that if you ask 10 different guys, you're going to get 10 different answers, that some of them are identical and some of them are not. And none of them are bad. None of them are wrong. And I think that that's what's so valuable in us having 3 district education officers in the 11th. Not all districts have 3, but I think that that's a great thing, having 3 guys in here, myself and Worshipful Brother Fowler and Worshipful Brother Dewey, is that I think we each bring something a little bit different to the table. I just know that being an educator, one of the greatest honors I have is when a lodge says, "Hey, do you have something that you could do tonight?" And that's an honor for me to be able to stand up and do that. And they said, "Oh, you should always make sure you got a couple things in your pocket, to kind of whatever." And if for me, I mean, if I don't know. I just believe so. Here's the thing, guys. It's really kind of interesting. The great Tim Kite, who unfortunately just passed away within the last year from cancer, And I studied with Tim on Focus 3 leadership, okay? The ERO, the E plus R equals O guy. But Tim talks about this, that if you have a concept in your head,
Mm-hmm.
you're willing to compromise. But when that concept in your head becomes a belief in your heart, you're not as willing to compromise. And I think that the true goal for me, looking at it as a district education officer, is to educate guys in a manner that the concept that they have in their head of being a Mason becomes a true belief system in their heart.
A core part of them.
Absolutely. When it becomes that belief system that they are really grabbing onto and say, this is what I believe, this is what I feel. And it goes into that personal journey. And we talked a little bit about that, and we said we could do several of these podcasts just on that.
Yep.
But I think that that personal journey is there for every Mason, but yet we have absolutes. The lights are absolute.
Mm-hmm.
The place of darkness that they have come from is different and personal for every brother.
Yep.
And I think it's important for brothers to understand that was not a one-time occurrence. From a mental health standpoint, we all have that, but it still boils down to, we can walk into this lodge, take a look at this altar, take a look at the Bible, square and compasses, and go, they're always there.
Yep.
They're there for me as an individual and to help me to fit into this fraternity and what we're doing. So, I don't know, as a DEO, I feel the weight on my shoulders. I think it's a tremendous responsibility. And, somebody just recently asked me, they go, well, if you ever become a district education officer, are you going to miss being a DEO? And I says, if you think I'm done educating, when if I become a district like I said, that's not up for me to decide. But if I'm ever, given that responsibility, I'm not done educating. I don't care how old I am. I'm going to be educating because it's in my blood, and it's a belief system that I have in my heart.
Well, I will say, from a few weeks ago, when you were here at a state meeting and we had the principal's proficiency for one of our brothers being passed to the degree of fellowcraft and stuff, and you gave a brief one, you have a way of educating that kind of, when you started talking, you took control of the room and you made I could sense everyone around just going, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, well, let me think more about that, because I know as secretary, I'm kind of far away from the education stuff, but I can see everything. And I think I was typing some notes and you started asking the questions, and I was like kind of half paying attention. I was like, well, wait a minute. What is that answer? And then I was
thank you.
I'll stop writing my meeting minutes and I will pay attention to this, because this is interesting.
Thank you. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Of course.
I think that when we can involve people, and I think when I do concerts, different concerts, the way we program, the way we do things, the best thing that I can do is make an audience member feel like that they're actually part of the concert. That when we can take away the division between audience and the stage and the performers, when we take away that wall, it involves them more, and they feel like that they're part of the experience. And I think it's the same way here. Most Worshipful Brother Murphy is a perfect example, as is, Most Worshipful Brother Grindle or Rill or any of these guys, or the Grand Lodge officers now, is that they tear down that wall that oftentimes that we perceive. Oh, I can't talk to them. They're a Grand Lodge officer.
Yep.
And you know what? They're all great guys. They have great ladies at their sides. It's just, I don't know. I get, that belief system in my heart, when I start talking about it, just grows even that much more. So I think that when we are involving people, and I think that's a real key in education, are we involving people in the room?
Mm-hmm.
And that presentation that night wasn't necessarily interactive, yet we involve brothers.
Yes.
And it's something for me I don't consciously think about, So I'm flattered that you saw it, but it's just like I said, 38 years of doing this. But you know what? But let me say this: you don't have to be a longtime educator in order to make a difference in men's lives and to help to educate. I mean, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And we have to be in this and educating each other and not being afraid to ask the questions sometimes. Is that the best thing that we can do as Masons?
Yeah.
I think it's fair. And as long as everybody is open-minded about it and thinking about what is truly best for Masonry, and, you know, the stronger we make each other, the stronger the fraternity is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
It kind of goes back to that. We're not individuals. We're a brotherhood. We're like you said, we're all in this together. We're all trying to make our fraternity better, our lodge better, ourselves better, our friends, brothers next to each other. It's better.
Exactly.
Yeah. You talk about the circle of life sometimes. And how we're all connected. And, you know, I remember it's kind of funny. First time I saw the movie Avatar after I became a Mason. Yeah. And I'm thinking about that tree and everybody's tying into the tree and everything. And I'm like, oh, you know, here's the masonry. And we all tying in. And I just started chuckling a little bit. And I'm like, yeah. So, yeah.
That'll be a topic for an episode someday. Is James Cameron secretly a Mason?
Is James Cameron a Mason? That's right.
So it sounds like you've had a very eventful life and eventful journey through Masonry and stuff. But let's kind of jump back to the very first step.
Yeah.
What made you knock on the door to your first lodge? What made you go, you know what? Let me see what these guys are about.
So this is a really weird story.
We like weird.
Well, yeah. well, that's why I'm here. So I'm in Chicago at an international music conference.
Okay.
And I'm talking to John Philip Sousa IV, Sousa's great-great-grandson. And we're talking, and a gentleman walks up, and Sousa IV, we call him Four. Four introduced me to him, and his name was Patrick Dugan. And Patrick Dugan was the master of a lodge down in the Middletown, Ohio area. And he introduces me and he says, Rod's, as far as the family goes, Rod's the top portrayer of my great-great-grandfather, blah, blah, blah. And he says, oh, really? He says, that's awesome. Are you a Mason? And I said, I am not. He says, you know that Sousa was a Mason, right? And I said, I did know that, yes. And he says, well, if you're really going to be like Sousa, you need to be a Mason. And I'm like, okay. And that was the end of really the conversation. We went on, talked about other music stuff or whatever. Yeah. And so anyway, I go into school on Monday and I open up my email and there's an email in there from our secretary. Rod Zirkle is amazing. And I mean, he's well known throughout the state. I mean, he's just an amazing guy. So Worshipful Brother Zirkle, I get an email from him that says, hey, I received an email on Sunday from a master of a lodge down in Middletown, Ohio, by the name of Patrick Dugan, and it says here that you have to become a Mason. And he said, so Rod said, give me a call. So I called him. He says, listen, there's something called a one-day class that's going to happen over in Toledo on March the 25th. And he says, Patrick says you have to become a Mason. And I said, oh, okay. And so I'm not one of those guys that runs home and jumps on the internet and starts reading everything, because I know the opposite side of it. So like when people say, well, the internet says you should teach band like this. Well, whatever. Okay, that's nice. So I'll be nice now. But so I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I actually went into over where Damascus, Collywood, and Fort Entry meet in Toledo, and I walked in pretty much sight unseen to Masonry. And I told my wife, Worshipful Brother Zirkle took me over, and I told my wife, I said, listen, if I get into this and I feel like something's not right in my belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like, so here come the goats and here comes the paddle and, whatever else, all the other stuff that we joke around about and everything. And it is joking around. But anyway, I said, I'll call you and you can drive to Toledo and pick me up. I said, I will excuse myself from the room and I'll walk outside and you can pull in the parking lot and I'll jump in and we'll go home. I'll even take you to dinner. And she said, okay. And Right Worshipful Brother Hoffman, and I just love that man. And unfortunately, John passed away about 6, 7 years ago from cancer. And I absolutely love John. But John was the master for the entered apprentice degree. And I was fascinated in the way that he delivered that Master Mason degree. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, this is striking a lot of, pardon the musical pun, a lot of notes for me. This is
figured it.
Yeah, this is in harmony. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop with the musical puns. But no, I just felt like that. Like this goes along with a lot of my belief system. I want to know more. And we got done with the entered apprentice degree, and I couldn't wait for the second degree to start. And then I couldn't wait until lunch was over and I could go through the Master Mason. And then I jumped in both feet. I have to learn. And luckily we had some guys at Oliver H. Perry that really helped me through some things. Right Worshipful Brother Hayward Evans, past district deputy. Of course, Worshipful Brother Zirkle was there. Worshipful Brother Baumbarger. These guys, Worshipful Brother Tom Evans, all took me under their wing. And it was basically a thing, ask anything. We'll help you through this. Now, I got to be honest, though, I have been criticized in my early days. You're not a real Mason. You were raised in a one-day class.
I wanted to ask you a question about that because I find having like principles proficiency one-day class as great
they're awesome.
Things.
They're awesome.
Because when I'm teaching someone, the first thing I always ask them is, how do you learn? Are you a visual learner? Are you an audio learner? Do you need to repeat things?
Right.
Do you need to have things explained to you to learn them? And for a long time, Masonry has been kind of this is the way we do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, there are reasons for that, and that is completely understandable. And there are reasons why certain things have to be certain ways, as you get educated about over time in the fraternity. However, I do think that there are men of great promise and potential who just learn differently.
Absolutely.
Who would benefit astronomically from this fraternity, so we can adjust to schedule, to learning style, to comfortability, to allow them to expand their knowledge and expand their horizons. In my personal opinion.
No, you're right on the money. And for me, believe it or not, looking at it from the outside, if someone would have told me, you do this, then you got to take an exam, then you're going to do this, you got to take an exam, then you're going to do this, and you got to take. Well, as a director of bands, oh my gosh, and I hate saying this, we're busy, because I hate asking guys, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm busy. Well, good, you ought to be busy. Seriously, think about, and I'm going to digress for a second, think about the greatest human being you've ever known in your life. And then, okay, you're thinking about who it is? Okay, were they busy?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you ought to be busy. And I hate when people say, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm busy. But I was doing so many things with the band, rehearsals in the evenings, performances every Friday night, a lot of times performances on Saturday. And a lot of times people think high school bands are like the fire department, that we're all sitting around waiting in the band room for a special event. They call and you run out the door and you go back to the band room and shine your instruments like the fire truck and wait for the next phone call, And that's always, the band directors always joke around about that. But there's some truth to that. If they would have told me that I would have had to done 3 different degrees and do all the exams and spent, I don't know if I would have done it. I'll be real honest, because of the time commitment. So the 1-day class for me was perfect. But the thing is, once I got into it, then I realized I didn't have time not to do it. You know, that's the thing that
you took your piece of pie, and now it's like, well, now I'm stuck with it.
Well,
not stuck with it.
Not stuck with it, right.
No.
For me, it was a thing of, okay, I have to make the time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I see the relevance in this fraternity. I see the relevance in what we're trying to teach, what we're trying to offer brothers. And so then it was a thing of, I have to make the time to do this. And I was appointed as a senior steward right away, and went through the chairs, and unofficially served as master for 4 years, 3 years officially. That's another whole story. But I've loved it. So this year is the first year that I've been on the sidelines, not sitting in a chair.
It's an interesting feeling.
It is interesting. And, you know, and sometimes they look at you, what do you think? And I go, I don't know. I'm not the master. You know, but no, it is different, but I love it just the same.
So I have kind of a couple of different questions I'm going to tie together. First and foremost, because something I wanted to ask you that I just didn't have an opportunity to until right now. What is it like portraying a historical figure that was a Mason? What is that like to you?
Well,
Does that kind of feel like the fraternity stretches through the ages? Does it feel like something really tangible about the spirit of the brotherhood and the spirit of the fraternity?
Yeah.
Or is it something that you just feel is a nice homage to Masons who have come before?
Well, being a Sousa historian, it tells me a lot about him and the way he approached a lot of things. People would ask him when he wrote all of his marches, and he wrote a lot of other things other than marches. A great composer. And he always said that his marches, all of his music, his writings, his novels and stuff, he wrote 5 full-length novels, came from a higher being. Oh, does that sound familiar? You know, and the way that he treated people, I mean, he was very giving of his time. And I look back now and I see a lot of pictures, and they were orphanages that he was in, but they were Masonic orphanages. You know, I stayed at a hotel in Dublin, Ireland, that was a Masonic orphanage for girls. It was amazing. It was, you know, and it's been turned into a hotel. But when I see Sousa now, I realize now a lot of the why Sousa was who he was. And at that time, you know, it was a foregone conclusion. If you were a member of one of the military bands in Washington, D.C., you were a Mason. Just flat out. I mean, Sousa's dad was a Mason. He belonged to the Navy Lodge, Naval Lodge, which is still there. You know, and I've always tried to figure out, okay, then why did Sousa join Hiram Lodge and not the Naval Lodge? And the only thing I can really, we can find no definitive answer, but we think that a lot of it is just because a lot of the guys that he was, quote, over as director of the President's own United States Marine Band, that he didn't want, he wanted to kind of have his own life and maybe get away from his dad, Antonio, not get away from, but separate himself a little bit from Antonio and maybe the members. But we don't really know, but it does carry a little bit different weight for me now, because now when I do Sousa presentations, and I'm doing a lot of Sousa the Mason presentations, I've done them on video calls and stuff like that all over the United States, and I make a lot of visits. I was just with the Turkeyfoot AMD here a couple weeks ago over in Waterville. And, but it does carry a little bit of different weight. But it also helped me, though. It's kind of interesting. The most famous picture of Sousa, he's in his Marine Corps uniform. And there was a medal that I was always, you know, I'm like, what is this medal? What is this medal? And we're looking into the military medals and stuff. So finally I get a good, clean picture of him that I can enlarge and enhance. And I did that, and I looked at it, and I go, I need to open up the vault with his civilian medals. They're like, oh, it wouldn't be in there. That's got to be a military medal. I go, I don't think it's a military medal. They're like, really? And I said, no, it has to be. You're only allowed to wear military medals on a military uniform. And he's in uniform. That would be highly frowned upon. And I says, pull out the civilian medals out of the vault. So that we open up that vault, pull out the civilian medals, and I said, right here it is. And it was a Knight Templar fob. And they're like, why would he be wearing that? And I says, the only thing I can guess is that he was at some sort of an event the night before and had that fob and was wearing it. And it is a Knight Templar fob from York-Rite.
So may I conject a little bit on this?
Oh, absolutely.
As a Knights Templar and member of Utah Commandery over at Paragon Lodge, I know that they give out slightly different ones if you are a member of the military when you go through your commandery degrees.
Correct.
And that it may be something along that lines of he was given the one for military service.
So you can't see it on this one. I have, and obviously, I'm showing the guys this picture. So I know what's inscribed on it on the front and on the back, and there's nothing military. So we've done the research, and then if you read any of the books by Chris Rulli, R-U-L-I, great guy. He's a historian in D.C., and we've talked about it as well. And he said, no, it has nothing to do with the military. So when you find different stuff like that, and you see him doing
interesting little historical tidbits.
Right. So when you're a historical figure and you're doing something with a Mason, it does help to lend some perspective. It may be, and once again, it makes you scratch your head and go, I wonder.
Yeah.
And then you go down that rabbit hole too. So, but it's a lot of fun. Trust me.
So there's one question that's sometimes hard to ask, but we've talked about it a little bit. And the question is framed as if you could change one thing about our fraternity, what would it be? And now that's not meant to be a negative question.
Right.
It's not meant to be changing our dogma or changing our ritual or anything. It's meant to be more along the lines of, would you change the way certain meetings are held? Would you change communication styles? Would you change a couple little things here and there? But I go back to our discussion we had about the one-day classes and the principles proficiency and all of that. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, I would see a change that we could both agree on as increasing like initial interaction and engagement and education with people, but also kind of expand the way Masonry gives knowledge to its new people.
You know, in listening to your previous podcasts before, and I knew this question was on its way. And I've given a lot of thought to this, and I'm still not sure I have a good concrete answer that is not based upon, a good friend of mine who passed away was very high in the Rotary. He was a Rotarian. And they have that little yellow card in it. And one of the things what you do when you make a decision is it good for everyone? I think as I say this, there's going to be guys that are listening to this say, well, we do this, and that's awesome. But I think from a standpoint of education, that I think we have to keep exploring different ways to educate. Like you were talking about, like the different learning styles. Are we an auditory learner? Are we a visual learner? Are we a kinesthetic learner? Are we a combination learner? And that was the biggest thing that we did, how I was able, you get a band, I've had 230 kids in the band room at one time. Well, you better figure out really quickly how to deliver the same message in different ways. Without saying, okay, for all you visual learners, we're going to do this. And for all you kinesthetic learners, we're going to do this. It's not like that. But education really is the key. We were talking in here, the very high percentage in Ohio of entered apprentices that never go on to the fellow craft. Well, me being a why guy, I'm like, why? Why is this? And I really do think that it goes back to mentors, that are we asking the right questions? Are we leading? I think sometimes we get in there, and I think we become, and it's a term that I've used them with graduate classes. I think sometimes we become so knowledge constipated that all we want to do is tell guys every bit of Masonic knowledge that we think that we have. And it's really goes back to a thing, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so the best thing I think we can do with an entered apprentice is go back and ask them the why. Why did you want to be a Mason? What was that place of darkness? And you guys heard me do, an educational presentation on the place of darkness from whence you came. And I think we go back to that and explore and explain to them what did the obligation really mean? What did the charge really mean?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, there's a lot of old English in there that sometimes that we sit and look at. And that's, I go back to, I still think the best way to memorize is truly memorize with the meaning and what the intent of what we're saying is, and quit memorizing words. But I think the education of our entered apprentices, I think there's a reason why from fellow craft to a master mason, the number is much lower. And it's because I think it's the guys that have been willing to say, well, I need to discover. But I think as mentors, we need to help them to discover, and for them to say, and for them to know that, let's face, I think I found that I'm working with a gentleman right now. It's came from a pretty dark place in his life, and saw how Masonry can help him, and then he just had something else happen, and it took him back down to that place of darkness. And when I'm trying, but he knows that I'm there for him. Masonry will always be here for him. The great lights of Masonry will always be here for him. And no matter how many times he finds a place of darkness, that's still there.
Yep.
And, if you go back to the Hebrew meaning, we talked about this a little bit. If you go back to the Hebrew meaning and let there be light, it's really an initiatory thing of initiating one into a path of light. And that's really what we're doing as Masons. And I think that when we can really listen to an entered apprentice and find out their reason and help them to foster the belief system that we have, and how they can really take this journey, this path of light, and tailor it to them. I mean, the great lights are going to be there. And we'll have all sorts of opportunities to expound with knowledge and stuff. But I think the biggest mistake that we can make as mentors is talk too much and not listen enough.
I mean, Craftsman, I think we've found the focal point of this episode, but I do want to expand on the membership part here. I mean, you as an educator, as a learned person, you have knowledge and expertise in this, but you also had good experience at your one-day class. As you said, you had some very good brothers who were there acting as mentors for you.
Yeah.
So if you could expand on that and just kind of delve really deep into the ideas of what it means to be a mentor.
Well, I think it goes, so I'm a big sports guy, love sports, right? And I'm a college recruiting football junkie, right? I marched in the Ohio State band, dotted the I 3 times. I'm a huge Ohio State fan. And I've had, fortunate enough, I knew Woody Hayes, got to spend time with Woody and Earl Bruce and even Urban Meyer. It's kind of interesting when you when they interview, why did you pick Ohio State? You're the number one linebacker in the country. Why did you pick Ohio State? Or why did you pick? And they always talk about the relationship. You got to build a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They have to know, our candidates for other degrees have to know that we want for them what they want. And the best thing we can do is build that relationship. A phone call, hey, how we doing? So that they know that every time that they see that it's you calling on the phone, it's not necessarily just to talk about Masonry. It's to talk about them as an individual. And I think that when we take a bigger role in making sure that they understand that we truly do want what's best for them. The other thing is this. Michael Jordan used to get asked all the time, what can I do to make my kid a better athlete? And the first thing he always said, well, leave him alone. Just let him go out and play the game. Here's what he said. First, they have to learn to love the game before they'll love to learn the game. If we can help guys fall in love with Masonry and what we have to offer, the rest of it's easy. And that was always my philosophy with my younger kids in band. Hey, you gotta learn to love it. And here's how you're gonna learn. We're gonna have fun. There's fun in being good at it. There's fun in advancement in your skill set. And things but with the understanding, it's going to take time. We live in such an instant gratification, society right now. If we want something, we pull out that piece of plastic out of our back pocket, and that's why there's a credit card crisis in the United States. But it's going to take time. We have to be upfront and honest with our new members.
Yep. That
this is a longer journey, and your journey really doesn't end until you lay down your working tools.
Yep.
This is a constant thing that we're going to have. So I think we have to help them to love the fraternity and what the fraternity has to offer. And we need to be able to build relationships, and the rest of it will fall in place. I think sometimes, and I'll probably get bashed on this a little bit, but I think we push Masonry too hard sometimes.
I tend to agree a little bit.
mean, I think there has to be something there where we're looking at the man and say, we're interested in you.
Yes.
And what you have. And that's the thing that I tell guys when they come in and meet the guys.
Yep.
Because there's so many different, there's FBI agents, there's federal marshals in the room, there's welders in the room, there's plumbers in the room, there's electricians in the room, there's educators in the room, there's pilots. There's also all these different occupations, and just come in and talk. Hey, there's really cool guys.
Yeah. And I know going through the offices that I've been at Lodge and whatnot, I think the thing that I learned the most is when I was senior deacon, because you have to guide the candidate.
Yes.
And I've always been very, hey, I'm not going to go up to you and talk to you if I don't know you. I'm very shy in that matter. But I found that as senior deacon, you have to know the candidate. You have to. So what I end up doing is when the candidate's getting ready after he's clothed and everything, I would go in there and I would just talk to him. Hey, what you did today? How's your life going? Not, hey, this is what we're about to do. This is what you're about to see here. Once I got to kind of know them a little bit, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be your guide, letting you know. Yep. So you're familiar with me. You're not going into this place. And
we tell them, follow this guy here and don't be scared, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's basically what we tell them. Well, they have to be able to say, okay, I do trust you.
Yes.
That's the building of that relationship. And it's just not a relationship with mentors. It's a relationship with everybody else in there. I mean, John Hoffman, I wanted to reach out to John Hoffman like right away. I was so inspired by that. But then all these other guys at the lodge that were the ones that were like, we'll help you, because I was asking questions. I wanted to know.
Mm-hmm.
And, the gentleman, when I came in tonight that I was talking to, he's being raised on the morning of May 9th to a Master Mason, and he's asking all the right questions. Now, he also has 2 PhDs, so he's an inquisitive guy.
He's cheating.
He's cheating, and we're going through the Fellowcraft principles proficiency. He's like, well, what about this? I go, well, hang on. Talk to me about that after May the 9th. Well, what about that? And I said, no, just stop. And he's one of my best friends. So I'm like, no, just shut up. We'll get to you in a little bit but he's hungry. And so
that means he'll go far in this fraternity.
Bingo! Because he's loving it. And if he loves it, now he wants to learn it.
Yep.
Where I think that sometimes we flip. So going back, I know this has been around the barn a couple times, but going back to the question, what can we do? What would I do differently? I would put more emphasis on the personal journey of every man that comes into this fraternity so that they can see the path that they want to take using the same tools that we're using. I mean, there's a lot of contractors out there that build houses, and they all do some things a little bit differently. But the bottom line of it, we're still using hammers. We're still using a level. We're using a square. We might even use a plumb. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so if there was one thing I could change about the fraternity, I would say that I think we, and here I am as an educator saying this and as a district education officer, and I'm going to get beat up for this. I think sometimes we push Masonry too hard because if they want Masonry, then we give it to them. But we can't, I mean, I think there's a certain degree of force feeding, for lack of a better term.
I understand what you mean because it's the same kind of thing of like overloading someone too much.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. When they get done with a degree, it's an open mouth and a fire hose. Right? With the amount of information.
I think it's too overwhelming.
It is.
I'm sorry, but I think we can't talk about a lot of the stuff of the degree of the lecture on the airwaves.
Right.
If I'm just going to be brutally honest, I think the entered apprentice degree itself is good for your first experience.
Yep.
But the lecture on top of it the same night is just overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. And
Yes.
and I think that sometimes then we go out into the dining room afterwards and every guy, hey, welcome to the fraternity. Now you can blah, 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 and here it comes. And now more information. Or the best thing we can go, and we've started doing this after degrees. Hey, what's your favorite dessert? What's your favorite pie? Oh, I love apple pie. So you know what we do? We go buy apple pies because that's their night.
Yeah. Yep.
So, hey, congratulations. And guess what? We got some apple pie. Oh, that's my favorite. Is that why you asked that question? Yeah. Because I just call and say, hey, we're just having,
Tailoring the experience more to the individual's reception of the education.
Yeah. And I think, not to pat us on the back, but I think this is where we're kind of excelling, especially with our worshipful master, Mark. He's been like, no rush on the candidates. It's, hey, if we got to do an extension, we got to do an extension.
Right.
You guys learn at your own pace. I mean, he's a teacher, but the brother that we just passed to the degree of Fellowcraft, same kind of thing. As soon as he started learning the EA, he goes, well, you don't have to tell me right now, but what's that pin mean? Or what's this mean? And it's like, we can't disclose it until, and he's like, oh, no. And he came to the Grand Master's reception and he was asking questions and it's like, oh, we really want to. So he's hungry too, but he's like,
soon, brother.
Soon. So it goes back to that whole thing of when I said that my job in a presentation, if a guy walks out of here and thinks about one thing.
Yeah.
So if they're asking questions, guess what? They're thinking about something, aren't they? That's really the goal right there. And then they start more, and more, and more. And I think that's really valuable for us as Masons. Can I preach Masonry with absolutely. Obviously there's a lot of guys out there that have a lot more different depths of in the knowledge and everything else like that. And I get it. I'm still learning. I am. Yeah. I'm wet behind the ears as a Mason. I feel blessed, though, to have been hanging around the amount of people that I've hung around with and some outstanding Masons. I mean, every time Mike McCandlish, the Deputy Grand Master, and I have become very, very good friends. And every time I'm with Mike, it's more knowledge, But Sean Johnson, same way, or Bill Carter, any of them,
Great men. Great men.
They're great men. And here's the other thing that they have. They have great ladies beside them. I had somebody say, "Oh, your wife is behind you supporting." And no, my wife's right beside me. She's in both feet also. And because she knows that when I come home at night from some sort of, whether it be an inspection or just a stated meeting or doing a podcast or whatever, I'm happy because I got to talk about something that I absolutely love. Yeah. And be part of something that I absolutely love. And even if I just go to a state meeting and I sit there at somebody else's lodge and don't say a word, I get to see brothers doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that's inspiring. That's once again where I become the student, somebody else becomes a teacher.
So real fast, we'll kind of, yep. Calm down, Gabe. I see you're pointing at the questions.
I like these questions that are coming up.
Yes, I would like to ask one if you allow. So yeah, I will say 3 more questions for you, and then we'll let you go off into the wild and create more greatness. But you've name dropped a lot of brothers, talked about a lot of people throughout your Masonic history through your years here. Do you have a Masonic idol or hero that you would love to either A, tell us about, tell us an interesting fact, or even tell us a funny story that they don't want shared about them?
I mean, it's like students. I never had a favorite student. I really didn't, because every student challenged me to be a better teacher.
Okay.
And I think every Mason that I meet, there's something I can take away from that brother that makes me stop and think about some things, and just, so many different fascinating occupations and experiences that they've had. We had a guy, this is really kind of cool. We had a guy come into OHP and he was visiting and came in a couple of different times, I think he had a summer home or something like that, or was coming up and renting a place and he was a welding expert. He was an expert in welding and welding other materials. So he's talking about that he had a guy walk into his class and said, "Hey, I need to learn how to weld XYZ, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Well, that's really kind of specialized." He said, "Well, I'm a welder by trade, but I need to learn how to do this." So he taught him how to do it. And he says, "I only have 6 weeks. It's done." And he says, "I don't see him for like 2 years or something like that." And he came back in one time and he says, "Hey, I want to show you about the project." He wasn't allowed to talk about the project, that he was learning how to weld these different materials. And he said, "I want to show you what I've been doing and what you taught me to do." And he was the one that welded all the overlay in the remodeling of the Statue of Liberty.
Ooh,
so he says,
cool.
I taught the guy the expert and I taught that guy. So you see all sorts of different brothers. I have been very, very blessed. And I don't mean to name drop, to really name drop from us, like, "Oh, look who I know." That's not it at all. It's just that there's so many cool guys.
Yes.
That are out there doing, I don't know. So a favorite, no, because every brother that I run into has something that I can learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I did mention John Hoffman, but John really is the one that, even though it was a one-day class, that really initiated me into this fraternity. And actually, the DEO jewel that I have, or that I wear, is a different color than most of them. Most of them are a dark blue. The lamp of learning is dark blue, and this one's like more of a baby blue. And that belonged to John. And I fought tooth and nail to get that jewel when I became a district education officer. But the other guys knew how much that John meant to me, and they helped facilitate that. So there's not a time that I don't put that jewel on that I don't think about John Hoffman. Just a great man, an amazing Mason, taken from us way too soon. but I'm glad to see that so many organizations do fundraisers in John's name. You know, the John Hoffman, the golf outing that the Shriners do, and what have you like that. I just saw Robin at a Scottish Rite, his widow. Just saw Robin the other day. You know, his father-in-law just passed away within the last year, George, and just great people. But John Hoffman will always have a special place in my heart. And I don't know, but there's lots of guys out there that have just really helped me along the way. And part of that too is also when I say stupid stuff, and they're saying, well, let's stop and think about this a second. But that's okay, because that's how we learn.
Yes.
It's okay to make mistakes. You know, and I told my kids all the time, I said, listen, we're reading this piece of music, make mistakes. Like, you don't want us to play it perfectly? No, I don't. It's because you need to know it's okay to make mistakes. And we get done and say, okay, if you made a mistake, raise your hand. All the hands go up, like, hey, all right. But that's okay. Because I think that understanding that we learn from our mistakes, it's only bad if we don't learn from our mistakes. Yeah. So a favorite, no. Sorry, I digressed again.
No, you're perfectly fine.
I think that was a great answer to that question.
Yeah.
And that was a very apt question. So thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
You can now ask your 2 questions that I won't
Way to go, Ryan. Way to go.
These are always my favorite questions to ask the guests.
Let it fly.
As the ends to the interview. And because we always get such interesting answers.
Awesome. Yes, pineapple does belong on pizza.
Agreed, on certain pizzas, not on every pizza.
Well,
on certain
ones. Okay, go ahead, Gabe.
So, if you were to encounter someone who was considering masonry, or a new entered apprentice, or a new master mason 20, 30, even 50 years in the future, what kind of advice would you want to give to those future masons?
Boy, it's kind of interesting that you asked this, because as I'm finishing up my Royal Schofield for Master of the Craft, one of them is you have to write a letter to your lodge that will be opened up 50 years later.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting. I asked Most Worshipful Brother Charlie Murphy, who's the dean of Royal Schofield Society. I said, what was the toughest part for you? And he said, writing that letter. And I thought, okay, you know. And now I'm in the middle of writing it, and I've been writing it for 6 weeks. It's tough. It's really tough. How do you wrap up without it being a novel? And even Wilmshurst and Pounds, you know, there's a lot to go beyond that. If you read Albert Pike, whoever it is that we're reading, obviously we can go on forever, right? So the quest is, how do you make it succinct enough and to the point enough that, once again, I think that you get people to scratch their head. The thing that I keep going back to and trying to wrap my head around when I'm writing this letter is, how can I convey to them that this is worthy of a space in their mind, so that hopefully that space in their mind becomes that belief in the heart? How can we help them to understand that this concept can really become something special for them? And that's what I'm really trying to wrap my head around, is how do we do this? Because I think sometimes that's where we become, where we are so knowledge constipated that all we want to do is expound as much as we possibly can to somebody that just asked the question, so what's this masonry thing? You know, what has it, you know, and not to overwhelm, and to find some sort of a path that whoever I'm talking to, that they can see themselves being part of something special, to make them ask the question, well, what if this is something I would really like? What if this is something that could change my life? And that's the tough part to try to put into words at times, is how do you convey that? I know what the end result is that I want, but how do you really go about doing it? And so that's the tough part for me, is looking at that and saying, what can I say to a brother that makes them say, first of all, let's look at the concept of being a Mason. And then how can I turn that into a belief system that's going to make me a better man? And I think ultimately then to what can I do to provide something meaningful to the craft? What will my legacy be? You know?
Well,
Uh-oh.
Oh boy, do I have a question for you then. So, the last and final question I always like to ask guests is, after the advice for those future Masons even 100 years from now, what would you like your legacy to be to them?
That's easy. That I cared. I cared. I cared about them. I cared about their journey. That I was a guy that they could come to, and I would listen, and I would really take into account what they're telling me because I cared. As an educator, I loved every one of my students, and I was criticized for telling students I love them. Well, those are the people that don't understand the different types of Greek love. And agape love is a beautiful thing, where we can love people for who they are, for wherever they are. And I ended a lot of my rehearsals with this: love what you do, love where you do it, and love who you do it with. And so I just want 50 years from now, when they read that letter, I want the brother to look around the room and say, I think he really cared about this. And I think he cared about us, even though he doesn't know who we are, maybe. Because I got to thinking about that, because our son is a Master Mason, a member of Oliver H. Perry. And if 50, he's about to turn 27. I'm like, okay, 77, he'll probably still be around. I really want Colin to be in the room. And I guess the ultimate thing is that I want somebody to ask Colin is, did he really care about us that much? And I know what my son's going to say. He's going to say, absolutely. He loved you guys. He loved you. And he cared. And I care about this fraternity. I care about the men in it. I care about the world that we're in, and hopefully that the world that we're in can maybe get some of that hate out that we talked about a little bit earlier, and that Masonry can help provide that. But we also have to understand that Masonry will always have its enemies.
Yep.
We understand that. But you know what? Everybody hates everything. There's something out there. And sometimes there's nothing we can do. People are always, anyone can say anything about anyone else at any time, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you know what? Love what you do. Love where you do it. Love who you do it with. And we just need to care about each other. So that's what I want my legacy to be. He cared. He cared about us. He loved us. And I ultimately, that's where we are. And I really do believe that the lights of Masonry have taken me on that journey to enhance that feeling. And Masonry has given me, this sounds self-serving, and I don't mean it to be, but Masonry has given me a platform to love more people, to care about more people. And that's the important thing. That night when we were here, and one of the best things, and I'm not saying this, oh, look what I did, not by any means, but gosh, the feeling that I had in my heart when I walked across the room at the end of the meeting and took the pin off my lapel and gave it to the brother that didn't have one, that had just gone through.
Yep.
The feeling that it gave to me to be able to do that, And now I've seen him a couple times, and he's right away coming over. And you know what? I try not to talk about masonry with him. Just talk about him. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
You know, what's going on? What's new? What's, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm glad you threw a softball there at me on the end for a question. What do you want your legacy to be? Because I think it's easy.
I think that's one of the best answers we've gotten.
It is. That's why I like that question every time I tie the interviews up.
I agree. Like, that is, it makes you really think. And I don't think we could have ended this episode any better. Like,
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to tie this up together. So, craftsmen, as always, we say, remember, craftsmen,
your working tools in order and always be on the level.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. They only reflect those of the hosts or guests.